Welcome to the Bright Ideas Podcast.
Who you are. Let's start with an introduction. Who are you and what do you do and what's the company you run?
Sure. My name is Logan Lamance. I actually am the founder and CEO of Kanga Coolers. Kanga Coolers is a company we started back in college about 4 years ago. We created the world's first conceptual koozie for an entire case of beer or soda. And so back in college, I had to create a solution to a problem that we faced for an entrepreneurial class project. And I just turned 21 at the time. So the biggest problem I faced was drinking warm beer at a tailgate, of course, naturally. And so I realized that me and all my friends had these expensive $300 coolers that we just loved to spend money on and show everybody, but we never used them when we were actually going to a tailgate or to go play golf or just in the real world. We never used them. And I kind of realized that, okay, well, what do we do when we go to enjoy a cold beverage at a tailgate? Well, we walk by the convenience store on the way to the tailgate, just grab a cold case and then take it and drink it as it gets warm, because we didn't want to deal with the inconvenience of a cooler. So we decided, let's just take the convenience over the cold. And so we saw there was a gap between, using a cooler for 2 weeks to keep your drinks cold and going through the ice and the hassle versus finding something that's convenient for 3 to 4 hours. And that's where the idea came from for our first product, the Casemate, and thereby Kanga Coolers.
I love it. Talk about scratching your own itch. So let's fast forward a little bit to today so that we can give the audience some context as to what you've accomplished. And then we're going to kind of go and open up the history machine and unpack the things that you did to get from where you were, I got warm beer in college, to where you are today. So where are you today? If you want to share either, some metric that's easy to understand, revenue, number of things you ship per month, or something to give an idea of roughly what the company's grown to.
Yeah. So we're on our 5th year of business right now. And last year we became a multi-million-dollar company. And this year we're planning on 2X, if not 3Xing that growth, depending on how Q4 goes for us and as an e-commerce business. So we've come a long way. I mean, we are not that far removed from our founding. We're actually just in a town over from our university, at Clemson University, where we started it. Mm-hmm. But it's definitely crazy to see, with through Shark Tank and just a lot of things that we've done along the way, how far you can go in that short amount of time.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, so Shark Tank, great segue. You obviously were on Shark Tank. You got an investment from one or more of the sharks.
We did. We got an offer from Mark, and we didn't entertain any others. That we just went for it, which in hindsight I think was a good decision. Made our episode look very clean.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. So for the folks who maybe aspire to be on Shark Tank, let's talk a little bit about that. So you've got this idea because you've got warm beer, and then your first big milestone is you got on Shark Tank. What kind of happened between those two things?
It's a lot. There's a lot between those two things. It doesn't happen, overnight. From our vantage point now, it seems like it was just kind of right next to each other. But at that time, we had to realize, okay, well, we're a class project. How do we go from class project to real company? How do we go from idea in our head to let's actually figure out how to scale operations on this thing? Let's figure out our marketing strategy. How are we going to build a website for it? We had all that to figure out.
I'm actually interested in knowing how you even figured out a prototype. So, I mean, there are lots of people who have ideas in their head. So I'd love you not to skip how you went from an idea that's in your head to something that you can physically hold and then start to figure out how do we get this. And
that's the biggest win to begin with, right? That's the biggest milestone to start, is taking it from here to here and having it in your hands. So we actually, entrepreneurial to a T, we just said, okay, what are, we want to make a koozie for a case of beer. What are koozies made out of? Google what koozies are made out of. And then found out if we could get a roll of that material shipped to us. So we got it shipped to us, paid way too much, had just I think it's like a 30-foot roll of scuba foam shipped to us. And then we said, okay, well, we have the material. Now we just got to get it turned into something that's going to go around a case. Who has a sewing machine? Well, dress alteration shops have a sewing machine. So we ended up calling around the local dress alteration shops and saying, hey, we have this project. We go to the local university. Would you be willing to help us out with this prototype? And we actually found one. Her name was Mary Hancock. So shout out to you, Mary. we brought it to her and she said, I would absolutely love to do it for you, but on one condition. We said, what's that, Mary? She said, you have to buy me a case of beer to use and I get to keep the case afterwards. We said, okay, all right, done deal. Absolutely.
Deal.
So she's got
That's
the
awesome.
very first Kanga cooler.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure she has a couple of botched prototypes as well with that material. We didn't get all of it back, so I'm probably sitting somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's really smart, thinking about not you saying, how do I go and get a sewing machine? How do I go and build this myself? I think that's a smart note for wannabe entrepreneurs, which is think about the people that are already using the equipment, that already have the expertise, and figure out how you can work a deal to get them to do it for you.
Absolutely. And the approach originally was very simple. I mean, it's just a scuba foam sheet. Our product is far, more complex than that now with the different layers of insulation and things. But yeah, just breaking it down to the fundamentals and seeing what's my shortest way from point A to B and going there.
So what was the next chapter in the journey once prototype is in hand? Then what happened?
Got to get a team together. I'm not sure if you guys would believe it, but sometimes your class project partners aren't your best business partners. Sometimes randomly assigned a group in college doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work out for 5 years. So had to go through that. We have one guy, his name's Ryan, who was a part of the project, and he's still with us, which was amazing to have that fortune to find him there. But had to really set ourselves up as a business and change that mentality from let's get an A on the project to how we're going to form the foundation on this thing, how we're going to get this thing protected with IP. You really do kind of, as an entrepreneur, become experts in these different areas as they become needed. So we had to become somewhat experts on filing for intellectual property, setting our company foundation, operating agreements, finding the right people, all that not so fun stuff that everybody kind of just doesn't think about sometimes. They just breeze past that and focus on the product. But you really got to form a very solid foundation for your company to grow on. That was what that next chapter was focused on.
Were you bootstrapping that, or did you get a seed, family, friends, angel round, whatever word you want to use, basically, pre-real investment money? Did you do that, or did you guys just dig into your own savings?
We got a loan from a kind of like a friends and family / mentor. But that's it. I mean, that we've really adopted more of a bootstrap model since then.
Okay. And by the time you made it to applying to the Shark Tank, did you hire a professional, meaning maybe a consultant that's in your space in creating consumer products like this, to then Shark Tankify it more, if you will, to make it more complex and more robust before you went? Or did you go kind of with the prototype that you'd made with Mary?
We had a ways to go between that. We did a test market with a different factory in our local area. They weren't able to do it at scale, but they were able to produce a couple hundred of these things, so we could really tweak the formula. Should we put a top flap on it? Do people care about a handle? Like, is this a cooler where the handle's on the outside, or is this a koozie where you just open it up and grab the case's handle? Different little things like that, where we had to figure out what price point, all that stuff, just solidifying the product market fit. And then going from there to actually being introduced to our first mentor, who is where we got our first access to capital. He was a ex-vice president at Under Armour. And so there were a lot of connections that and just wisdom and insight, because he basically took a bunch of college kids that had a great beer drinking idea. Imagine, making it to a real company, trying to take our mindset and our perspective and shift it to one that's more serious. He set up a lot of things with us with factories, and we really got our product built out to where it needed to be. Then obviously we have to figure out how to market it and sell it. So we naturally went to Kickstarter from there.
Okay. So I'd actually, I had another guest of mine who, a fellow by the name of Colin McIntosh, founder of Sheets and Giggles, had he makes these bed sheets out of, I forget what it is, but another wonderful success story. And if you're listening, folks, and you haven't listened to that interview, his product validation strategy was brilliant. And I would encourage that you just go into the search box on brightideas.co and type in either Colin McIntosh or Sheets and Giggles, or Sheets might be apostrophe N. I can't remember. Anyway, so you did your Kickstarter, Logan. Kickstarter is not a new thing anymore. And there's a lot of competition to get eyeballs. And if you're not bringing your audience with you to Kickstarter, chances of you really lighting it up are pretty slim because there's so much competition. So what did you even do to make the Kickstarter a success?
Yeah, it was tough. It was very difficult. We realized that we had a concept that we had to educate people on to begin with. An iceless cooler, that's different. It's strange. So we have to educate people on that, and then to have to educate them on the platform. We realized that to have success on Kickstarter, from our vantage point, it's really key to have that serial backer be inclined to buy your product, like someone who's already natively on Kickstarter, readily able to adopt your product and your idea. We found that our target customer didn't necessarily already exist on Kickstarter. We found that we were dragging them kicking and screaming over to the platform to get them to learn how to use it, understand the pre-order process, as well as get them to take a leap on this new concept. And so we found, every time you dragged someone that hard, that far, you pay a lot of money for not as much return. So we learned a lesson on that, but we've made it out alive, had enough to start our first run and turn the next page for the next chapter, where we actually opened up a bit of a different channel for our business. We had watched Shark Tank for a while. We wanted to go on the show, and we knew how to build our company for that. We knew what kind of numbers they wanted to see. We needed to diversify some of our income streams in different channels. And we also knew that we wanted to be a company, not a product. So a lot of things that we had learned just from watching the show, we used to build our business and package it for the show.
Hang on.
I was just going to ask, Logan, was it just by watching the show, or was there some resource or research that you did? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there listening who are also dreaming potentially of going to Shark Tank. And I know that I find that when I'm watching, I kind of cringe when I know that nobody's coming to the table with what these investors are expecting and what they want. So was it just a matter of watching the show, or did you have other resources to figure out what you needed to do to be Shark Tank ready?
There were a couple different things along the way. As far as getting on the show itself, it's important on social media, figure out when the casting calls are, and just Google like what are the best tips and tricks for getting in front of the people, even begin that process. As far as preparing for the show itself, we had some people at our university that came together, some professionals in their own fields, come together and do some mock Shark Tank trials. We wanted to practice harder than we play. We wanted to get absolutely destroyed multiple times and be just absolutely embarrassed of ourselves, so that when we got up on the actual stage, we weren't. And they drilled into us, because the difference is on actual Shark Tank, if we have a good take or we have something good to present, we can kind of create that positive momentum in the room. When we're doing it with people that are specifically there to roast us, we can't get that momentum. Every single possible thing that they could find wrong, they're going to exploit that. They're going to pursue that. So we got to see, how bad it could be. We went again, fixed some of the things, and then figured out how to present it. So when we went on the show, it actually only lasted, I want to say it was 20 minutes. Usually they last about an hour, and they cut it down. Ours was only 20 minutes of the actual pitch. It was very smooth.
That's great. We're well rehearsed. I want to read you something real quick here. So I've been going through an exercise here today with my own software business about marketing and product market fit and so forth, and this concept of positioning. And there was a woman who I listened to, April Dunford is her name. She defines positioning as how your product is the best in the world at delivering some kind of value that a well-defined set of customers cares a lot about. When do you feel like you have your positioning nailed now? And if yes, was it always that way? Did you always know your positioning? And if not, how did you figure it out?
I think with anything, we don't have it perfectly nailed down. We're constantly trying to adapt things, change things, and improve things. But we evolved that over time. We thought that our customer would be a college student, just naturally. Well, yeah. But in reality, we found that our customer was the person that recently graduated college. And some people have a preference towards ice cold beer for 2 weeks, and they want that premium name of some of our competitors. They want, they like the status of that. But other people want to trim through that and just enjoy the experience and make it as seamless as possible. So we prioritize fun and convenience for that type of customer. That the type of customer that says, $300 for a cooler, I'm still not cool with that.
Yeah.
Right.
So
the cooler is made from Austin, Texas, I assume is who you're talking about.
There's a bunch now, but we take a different approach for sure.
So you have it's a very interesting marketing challenge that you were faced with, because you have a product that has wide appeal. Anybody who wants cold beer. Who you sell to? Anybody that wants cold beer. But that's a really hard audience to market to because it's too big. So then you could sit there and you could go, well, okay, so people who watch football, or people who go to like car races, or a college graduate. Like, how on earth did you even get the needle pointed in the right direction ish enough based upon hunches and assumptions so that you could hopefully use data to validate those hunches and assumptions and then really get dialed in on who your target customer is?
Yeah, just trial and error. I mean, we set out thinking our target customer was that college student, but through trial and error we primarily use Facebook ads for our marketing, just segmenting those audiences and things. We saw that, hey, this is the customer base that's buying the most. It's that 25 to 34-year-old, male, young professional, that type of person that enjoys going golfing. That was a big thing for us. Tailgating, like you said, going to the pool, doing different things, like on the boat. It's almost like we didn't actually have much of an idea at all. We just kind of tested a bunch of different things and then found our conclusion through that. And we're still testing that. We launched a new product that's kind of a different evolution of that concept called the pouch. And we're testing a different age demographic for that because we think it might actually resonate with a slightly older demographic. We're pairing that with golf right now, and it's doing exceptionally well. So taking our assumptions, obviously, to know what to test, but then really letting the results decide where we take it.
So the follow-on to that then is, and I know Stefan has a question, so I'll shut up and let him ask his next. The follow-on is, how long did that testing take, and approximately how much money did you spend during that period of time?
It took us a very long time. Not from the sense that we ran this test that we had no idea what we were doing. But I'd say even after Shark Tank aired, we had no idea exactly what we were doing from an e-com standpoint. I mean, we're just kids that graduated college. We have a lot to figure out, right? How to make a product, how to, find that product market fit, how to set yourself up legally, financing everything, operations. And marketing was, in my opinion, the last piece to fall for us to really, we don't know it all perfectly. We're still constantly growing, but to really fall into place and us understand it to an exceptional level to actually scale it. So we, it took us probably about, I'd say, a year after Shark Tank to get that nailed down and dialed in and truly understand how to test for those things, what to be testing for, what kind of creatives to show, messaging to show, interest groups to pair it with, to show what the customer resonating the most with. Obviously, Google Analytics is extremely helpful, but it's one of those things that we always want to check our assumptions because, we would have built the business to a college student had not we not.
Speaking of noticing, like you said, you're kind of looking at some golf partnerships or at least going down that path and noticing an older demographic on your website. And I was looking at some of your creative. I noticed one of your models was holding an Island beer, which was founded by a buddy of mine, Scott Hansen, who I went to military school with. Oh, you're friends with
Scott? Yeah, we're right up the street from where they're at in Charleston. We're in Greenville.